Hello and welcome to Push Your Glasses Up. I'm Mikey, and this is Review, where I take a look at movies that I enjoy that I think might be a little underappreciated. I want to showcase a personal connection that I have, or even just something that's under-discussed when it comes to these movies. So let's swing into a reboot with The Amazing Spider-Man. I've adored Spider-Man as far back as I can remember. The comics, which I've been collecting since I was about 5 years old, some memorable, some not so much. The cartoons, video games, anything I could get my hands on. If I was drawing, odds are I was sketching Spidey. It's one of my oldest connections to narrative and character, and I can always return to it when I need a little home. When I first found out that Sam Raimi was going to be directing a Spider-Man movie, either from the teaser in front of Jurassic Park 3 or pages of Entertainment Weekly, I had just about lost my mind. I grew up loving the character and adoring when comic book heroes were brought to the big screen. 1990's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was the first movie I demanded, to see in theaters, and Batman Returns left an indelible mark on me. So despite Spider-Man being Marvel's #1 name, the news still felt like it was specifically made for me. I saw each of the Raimi films day one in theaters, the first of which gave me that "you'll believe a man can fly" feel. When that series ended and a reboot was announced, I was nervous but still interested to see where it would go. And when I sat down for The Amazing Spider-Man, I was pleasantly surprised. Where Raimi's films capture a bygone era of Spider-Man, and frankly, society in some cases, I think The Amazing Spider-Man captures a much more modern take on everything. Gone is the majority of the camp, a solid chunk of the damsel in distress, and the melodrama. Instead, we get a less heightened tone, a female lead that isn't just there to be saved, and genuine moments of realistic drama. But on top of that, stellar chemistry is what really drove this movie home. And it really didn't matter who was sharing the screen for that chemistry to work. Whether it's Peter and Aunt May and Uncle Ben, Peter and Gwen, Gwen and her father, all of it works. Something that, looking back, isn't always there in the Raimi movies. This movie shelves a lot of that old Hollywood that Sam Raimi has in his movies. The Amazing Spider-Man brought this character back down to earth. It's a solid movie that wasn't the thing people first fell in love with, and it also helped prevent Spidey from joining the MCU. So I think folks tended to push this movie away for some of those reasons. But even if it's not your favorite take on the character, it's still an all-around satisfactory Spidey movie, which brings us to the main thing I want to talk about. After an origin story that did its job fairly well despite, some things like a sky beam, a little generic. Although I will say, it's the beginning stages of us seeing that in popular superhero movies that we got way more of in the coming years. But there's a very clear follow-up to this movie that was organically set up and went under the radar when production of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 started. A spider person and a lizard person fighting on a rooftop in New York City. Now, that feels like something that would make it far beyond just local news, right? That would probably circle around the world. Maybe it makes its way to, another country where a guy might be hunting things like lions and tigers, dangerous animals, someone that has a connection in the history of Spider-Man. This first movie set up Kraven the Hunter, and the potential of a follow-up that is so organically set up, so naturally set up, to be left in limbo and abandoned is unfortunate. The stuff that bogs down the sequel, how deep they explore Peter's family history, the over-the-top cartoonish depiction of Rhino and pre-Electro Max, doing the forced will they won't they roughly 9 times with Peter and Gwen, that all could have been wiped for a focused story on Kraven. He could come to New York, stalking his arachnid prey, but once he finds them, says he was investigating Lizard and rumblings that someone had picked up and continued Connor's research. Spider-Man, as he's wont to do, says he'll help. In time, Kraven gives tips to Spidey about prowling for those you're hunting, becoming a bit more of a mentor, because, you know, Peter's always kind of looking for that. But it's just a ruse for him to get close to Spider-Man. More investigating, more studying his prey, learning what makes him tick before going on his first full hunt. You can still have things in this movie that were in the final cut come into play. Like, you don't need to get rid of Spider-Man helping a kid that's being bullied in an alley. That's classic Spider-Man, and it works wonderfully in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Gwen's death could still happen because you could still have a goblin turn. You could still have Harry sick. You could still have the situation with his father. You could still have him go through the transformation, but you can have something more naturally transition to him needing to get to Spider-Man. Have Kraven be a little low on funds. You can have him just be hired in general by Harry. He comes to New York on the company dime, and that desperation still leads to Harry turning into the Goblin, and then you can still have the actually very emotional scene of Gwen's death. I love these characters, so to organically but inadvertently set up a Kraven story, not notice that's what you've done and then let it languish in some background limbo is the biggest disappointment I have with The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Beyond the messy and cartoonish decisions, beyond what actually makes it on the screen, the biggest disappointment I have is that squandered potential. So thank you for watching this first of hopefully more episodes of this project, not show yet. If you enjoyed this quick little jump into my head, you can jump into longer form versions of it with the Push Your Glasses Up podcast, which we do here every time there's a fairly big movie that comes out. And I'll put that playlist somewhere here-ish, somewhere. And also like the video, subscribe, it helps us out. Until next time, bye.